At the 2022 Academy Awards, the most popular performer in the world revealed he had been lying for 44 years. A man completely constructed from the ruins of a childhood wound. Not a little falsehood, not a public relations adjustment, but a basic building. A single moment of immobility from 50 years ago was buried under layers upon layers of deliberate excellence. Millions witnessed Chris Rock's face being touched by Will Smith's hand. They saw him scream as he went back to his seat. Minutes later, they saw him accept the Oscar for Best Actor. The whole business held its breath as tears streamed. They witnessed a breakdown. In reality, it was the realization of a self-promise he had made when he was 9 years old. When his body required him to defend someone, he finally moved. The problem was that it came too late, too publicly, and destroyed nearly all he had built over the course of 3 decades to show he wasn't the coward he thought he was. This is not a tale of celebrity being destroyed by a single incident. This is the tale of what happens when the armor you've spent your entire life constructing finally breaks down and you realize that the man inside was never the issue. There was always a true man inside. The dude is outside. The ideal one. The untouchable one. The one you came up with. The falsehood was that one. In any case, Smith's life has been a master class in self-construction. And he's finally giving up at the age of 58. I would like you to respect Will Smith's willingness to be broken in public by liking and subscribing to this video before we go further into the man behind the picture. He shielded us from his flaws for 40 years. Recognizing the bravery required for him to eventually cease is the least we can do. Every performance has trauma at its core. Trauma that isn't officially recognized or diagnosed. A child's perception of who he must be is altered by the weight of a moment that is so brief but has such profound effects. It was a row house on Willington Street in Philadelphia in 1977. Willard Carroll Smith, a 9-year-old kid, heard his father, Willard Carroll Smith Sr., hit his mother, Caroline. The boy remained still. That is the fundamental truth. He remained motionless. Young Will Smith made a choice during that time that would affect him for the remainder of his life. He was a coward. He wasn't a guardian. He wasn't a man. He was the complete opposite of what a guy ought to be. And if he lived to adulthood, he would dedicate every day to disproving this infantile judgment. His father was a respectable, aloof refrigeration engineer. Willard Sr. was cold. There was no softness in him. In the 1970s, he served as a model for what it meant to be a man in Philadelphia. Present, powerful, and emotionless. The emotional foundation was his mother. In stark contrast to his father's harshness, she was musical, Pentecostal, and vibrant. Other than this, the boy learnt nothing from either and adored them both. Love meant absorbing suffering without moving, while masculinity meant being distant. The hurt healed when Willard Sr. departed the family in 1988. It never recovered. It became calcified. The 9-year-old boy who stood motionless made an unconscious promise. He would be untouchable. He would become flawless. No one would ever doubt that he was a man because he would become so endearing, gifted, and essential to the world. He would deserve it. He would demonstrate it. He would create a character who was so endearing, captivating, and essentially wonderful that the cowardly boy underneath would be buried to the point where even he could forget he was there. He did just that for the next 44 years. When Will Smith was a youngster, he and his boyhood friend Jeffrey Towns co-founded DJ Jazzy Jeff in 1985. They released their debut album in 1986. In a scenario that was meant to be everything his father wasn't, they were superstars by 1987, expressive, imaginative, and fearless in their emotions. However, Will Smith refused to be authentic even in hip-hop. He was the tidy, humorous version of himself, the one who smiled while discussing his parents' divorce, the one who, in a medium based on anger and truth-telling, made you feel good. In 1989, Parents Just Don't Understand became an anthem because it made suffering bearable. Because Will Smith's rendition of Heartbreak featured a humor, millions of youngsters felt both visible and secure when they heard the song about their own broken homes. The armor has already begun to function. He was already using comedy to demonstrate his invincibility, transforming his injury into a global appeal. He owed around $2 million when his music career came to a standstill in 1990 as a result of royalties conflicts and financial mismanagement. $8 million to his label and the IRS. It's possible that a separate man vanished into the shame. At the age of 19, young Will Smith had blown it by making millionaire blunders. The voice of the coward was loud in his mind. Rather, he turned around. In 1990, he was chosen to play Jeffrey Jazz Banks in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, which would later serve as the model for his entire public persona. The program was a masterful example of self-construction. A poor child from Philadelphia was forced into a Californian mansion, an outsider making jokes to distract himself from his true alienation while attempting to blend in with affluence and white culture. Because he was portraying a sincere version of himself, the crowd adored him. However, he was having fun. Every chuckle was planned. Every vulnerable moment was scripted and practiced. From 1990 to 1996, the armor known as the Fresh Prince was refined over 6 seasons. Will Smith was more than just a celebrity. He turned into a cultural phenomenon. He was youthful, attractive, humorous, and untouchable. In 1992, he wed Cher Zampino, his high school love, and had a son named Trey that same year. To the entire planet. This was the clean-cut story's continuation. The decent man getting married, acting morally, and starting a family. The world was unaware that the marriage will end in divorce by 1995. A young guy still unable to fully be present with anyone due to the weight of that 9-year-old's paralysis, since being present meant being vulnerable, and being vulnerable meant being a coward. Will Smith had already started his move into film by the time The Fresh Prince concluded in 1996, and this was the pinnacle of his self-construction. The movies that came after The Fresh Prince weren't coincidences. They were decisions made in architecture. Will Smith did not become a blockbuster star by accident. He designed it with the accuracy of someone who knew that protection came from visibility. Each role was carefully calibrated to be neither too edgy nor too vulnerable. Always the hero, always the person who saves the day, and always essentially likable. His career as an action star began in 1995 with Bad Boys. He became invincible on Independence Day in 1996. A movie star, the kind of performer who could pull off a worldwide extravaganza and make you cheer him on while aliens decimated Los Angeles. He was no longer merely well-known. He has transcending qualities. He was the Fresh Prince who had developed into a man that everyone trusted. In 1997, Men in Black came next, 1998's Enemy of the State. The same alchemy was refined in each movie. Will Smith is the epitome of charm and talent. The man who could make you laugh and convince you that he was essentially nice while battling aliens or government conspiracies. Then came Ali in 2001. Ali was unique. Will Smith was supposed to portray a man who was not unbeatable for the first time in his career. Muhammad Ali was a guy of pride and uncertainty, of religious conversion and uncertainty, of beauty and fury. Vulnerability was necessary for the function. He needed to reach something genuine beneath the armor. The movie's 2 Academy Award nominations caught the attention of critics. Will Smith's flawless facade was starting to show signs of weakness, but they were controlled and aesthetically pleasing. The kind that gave him a deeper, more somber appearance and made him seem more like an actor than a celebrity. This trend was maintained in 2006 with The Pursuit of Happiness, a struggling homeless father and son. Will Smith portrays a man whose circumstances have completely broken him. The Academy took note once more. Once more, the public witnessed his ability to feel true emotion, but it remained under control. He was still able to maintain his hero status through a performance of vulnerability within a narrative framework. Between 2008 and 2015, his career reached its public peak. 4 Bad Guys movies, several hits, a revived music career, honors and accolades, and the kind of international fame that goes beyond amusement. Will Smith was conceived. He became the embodiment of invincibility. He became the model for how to be a black man in Hollywood without ever posing a threat. Be welcoming at all times and never be overly political. This was the armor's pinnacle. However, the fissures were growing deeper beneath where the outside world was unable to perceive. By 1997, Will Smith and Cher Zampino were divorced. In the light of his increasing star, the failure was silent and almost undetectable. In the distance, a son departed. A young man still unable to be present, still fleeing the injury, still unable to believe that love would not cause him to become paralyzed once more. There were many unresolved issues in his connection with Willard Sr., his father. They stayed in touch. They remained polite. However, either the wound had healed, or the youngster who had stood motionless and saw his father hit his mother had never grown into a man who could forgive such deed. Will Smith gave a kind but detached eulogy for Willard Sr. after he passed away in 2016. The eulogy of a man who, despite spending